Prophet of God by Chris Cooper, Chapter 7. Today, Troy and his crew, including Trevin, Jesse, as well as Lynn, were to set out on a new project, and the burden of it would be distributed among 4 crews total. The project, informally announced, was rumored to be huge and was expected to be the main job and main payout of the season. Main payout of the season. Brother Dan, being the head of the grounds for fellowship, was naturally positioned as an overseer for the project. Brian, the shady eyed foreman, who'd managed to gain the affections of Troy, not, was put in quasi charge of the newbie crews made from the assembly of the program. The guys of the church's program would gather every morning just outside the garages where the church locked up all the grounds and maintenance vehicles and equipment. It was a long aluminum building hosting 5 bays, each with a pickup truck nesting inside the mechanical doors, and a final elongated lift gate hosted all the light to mid-sized excavation and hauling machines inside under lock. The building featured a small addition where there was a fold-up card table and refrigerator on its last legs, pitifully humming under an even coating of dust, and a small bathroom off to the corner. The guys all met up, variously stretching and yawning, and formed a wide circle in the middle of a sea of crushed limestone gravel in front of the facility garages all around Dan, as had become routine. Usually beginning in the morning hours, this would soon be followed by a briefing of the day's work ahead. Dan would drift his gaze along the array of bodies and faces of all types around him, occasionally dipping his chin in an affirming nod and then glancing back down at his clipboard or adjusting his lanyard. He typically began the rundown afterward. Some of the guys of the program looked like they'd just come back from the farm. Tall boots, dirty blue jeans, and fairly tight tees formed around their crossed, tanned, thick arms, their lips almost invariably bulging with tobacco chew, strangely not subject to prohibition per the tabernacle's rules. Apparently, they just hated smoking itself and not the substances which delivered it. A couple of the rustic guys even wore cowboy hats, but not one of them were seen without at least the assertive camo duckbill cap and aviator glasses. Then there were guys on the opposite end of the spectrum, too, clearly dug up by the recruitment program from some suburb along the outskirts of Greater Port Ridge or beyond. Their tattered, styled jeans and poofy haircuts betrayed a young life of electronic convenience in their lean figures, likely athleticism. Most of these types were fixed into their smartphones, the occasional blurb or two popping out from their mouths amongst their friends scattered through the circle, and in every one of them appeared to have likely been born with, or might well have been, with at least one wireless earbud lodged into the side of their head. The assembly of young men, generally, could be said to be made up of something like country and jock, or some combination of that. "Morning, fellas," Dan finally spoke up. A return salutation usually followed here or there. "So, this morning we're going to head out to the main job of the season. Some of you guys may have become aware of it already, but this is about to be a little more involved and more intensive than the odd jobs we've had y'all do up to now, okay?" Some of the guys in the circle began to sway, kicking up a little bit of gravel. Uh, hmm. Dan flipped through the sheets lying on his clipboard. "Brian's going to be in charge of you guys for the most part." He swung his arm to present a young man in an A stance, chewing gum in a saffron tank. "I'm sure many of you have already met him," he continued. "Just a few notes before we head out, though. Each of you will be given an assignment sheet with a schematic describing the work area. You are to stay within the parameters of your work area, and if you have any questions in regards to your assignment, feel free to take them up with your assigned crew leads. I think you all know who those are, or with myself. This project is supposed to last for most of the rest of your duration here at the fellowship, and it will be followed by a farewell potluck arranged by the administration. Every work day, you'll pull together with your various crews, each in their designated vehicles. No other vehicles are to be used by any crew unless explicitly told to do so, and at the end of the workday, you are to promptly return the trucks to their bays, which you see behind me, and return all keys to the workbench area. A raised hand snagged Dan's attention. Yes, sir. Are the vending machines in there free? One of the young men gestured, smacking some gum toward the garages. Great question. You're welcome to any snack or drink you'd like in this facility. The machines are routinely stocked and they are free. Just be sure to hit the buttons C and 9 at the same time. And while I'm thinking of it, gentlemen, please refrain from any graffiti or other vandalism while we're on these grounds, and avoid drawing lewd shapes or phrases of any kind on church property. Dan paused, glancing around and nestling his clipboard into his hip. I'm referring to whichever artist decided it was a good idea to leave a, for lack of a better word, dick sketch across one of the machines. Some snort shot from the circle. While we can all appreciate a good joke, not the time or place, gentlemen. Moving on. While we're discussing discipline, the church has asked me to introduce our disciplinary procedure regarding the maintenance of professionalism during our stay here. Dan tucked the clipboard under his arm now and revealed a series of 2 rubber wristbands dangling from his other arm. This is a 3 strike, you're out system. How many of you fellas have played baseball? Dan raised his hand. The idea is that if and when you mess up while employed here at the fellowship, you will receive a verbal warning first. After that, if the behavior continues, I've been told to assign you an orange colored wristband. You are to wear this band throughout your stay as a way of keeping track of actions which have to be taken. If there is a continuance of problems of personal conduct on your part, you will receive a second and final warning in the form of a red colored band, like this one. And gentlemen, after red, there's no other color. You will be removed from the workstation and expelled from the grounds, with the possibility of your wage being compromised. Here at the church, we take personal conduct and professionalism very seriously. Violations are detailed in your onboarding packets. There are obviously things like stealing, damage to church property, drug or alcohol paraphernalia, and violent or confrontational behavior. I don't think we need to hold your hand, gentlemen. If you have any questions regarding our guidelines, please refer to myself, Brian, or any other church administrator. Are these things understood? The guys all nodded. Oh, and before I forget, Dan snapped, I wanted to introduce a bit of a latecomer to our operation. He's been anxious to work, so if y'all welcome, what was your name? Sir, right? Dan returned his reading glasses up to his forehead and turned over to his right. J- Jerry, a voice rang out. And, sure, that works. Some heads bobbled around curiously. Some muffled laughter floated around the group. Great, another queer. Jesse could hear Troy tishing to himself. Jerry drew a grin and held the straps of their overall breeches between their thumbs, with a colorful flannel underneath. They stood in tattered black combat boots and a straw hat tilted back up from their forehead. Jesse drifted his eyes over to Trevin standing beside him. Trevin's mouth hung open and he flicked Jesse's arm. It's. Trevin couldn't complete his sentence. Jerry scanned the circle, mostly greeted with apathetic frowns and distant snarls, until finally landing in Trevin's direction and proceeded to give a very obvious wink. The trek to the big worksite was rough, even for this untamed woodland of upper Michigan. Lint and Trevin bounced in the cab while Troy sent the diesel pickup flying down a winding gravel road, tossing sunflower seeds into his mouth and blaring the stereo. The guys had all tried multiple times to connect their Bluetooth to the truck, but each time it failed, and what was more, their internet connection was all but missing completely now. Lint would occasionally blurt curses as the crew drove over hilltops on the way, confused as to why his phone's already downloaded playlist refused to work too. They were stuck with, so it seemed, the only signal which fed through the ether, which was a church approved and likely funded DJ station on the radio, playing what seemed an endless variety of Jesus songs of one color or another, one or two easily recognizable from the services. The truck finally delivered the guys to a sharp turn. Before them, a narrow passageway unfolded. Trucks lined either side of the road, leaving just enough room for a vehicle to sneak between them. The fuck? Lamented Troy, slamming on the brakes. Ain't enough room in this place for fucking Jack and Jill to hopscotch down the middle of it. One could have better parking at an international airport the week before Christmas than here. Beside the multitude of trucks, there were trailers, two large steel dumpsters, various pieces of machinery and equipment, extension cords strewn all over the place, and a lineup of plastic wrapped pallets full of stone blocks weighing tons. The slim width of accessible road and volume of steel bodies all around made for a logistical nightmare, and Troy curled his knuckles against the wheel to do his best to squeeze into a spot to park somewhere, anywhere, along the omnipotent forest's edge. The guys scanned the area as they proceeded, while Lint took himself to leaning over Trevin, nearly diving into the glass of the side window in the cab. A tall, dark fence marked the formal entrance to the property. It was ornately decorated and brooding. A double-sided gateway opened up to the road. Yo, homie's packing, T, Lint whispered, dazzled at the wooden structure as they rolled along. There were also two guys meandering around the entryway, wearing tight-fitting orange t-shirts and black slacks covered in pockets. The men appeared to glare around with their dark glasses. Each one let an AR-15 style rifle casually lean on their backside. This is like fucking Fort Knox, remarked Troy. What are they guarding? Jesse kind of laughed. At last parked, the guys flooded out from the truck. Troy hung out of the door, leaning on his forearm, and lit a cigarette. Fuck 'em, he dismissed with a puff. The tearing noise of distant table saws and shouts of workers bled into the tree canopies in the absence of the truck's engine. Shots from air-compressed nail guns rang out too, echoing off the trunks of the woods. There was an open pit of torn-up earth between the wooden entryway and the armed guards. Some guys from the various crews stood waiting to get in, surrounding Brian, the foreman. Trevin, Troy, Jesse, and Lynn all walked ahead to meet the huddle. This is a good example. Congratulations, bud. Brian reached into one of his pockets, interrupting his speech to the others surrounding him. As Troy approached the crowd, examining the ground for stray nails and debris, an orange rubber wristband struck him on the chest, which Brian had tossed in his direction. All the guys in the group turned to look at Troy, who let the band fall to his feet before kneeling to pick it up and twisting it between his fingers in the billowing cigarette. Are you serious? Troy smirked. You've already been told once, bud, Brian retorted. Troy pinched the bracelet, his face falling onto Brian's wide shades. You're like 1 year older than me, sport, Troy snapped. The guys around looked back at him. Are we going to have a problem? Troy interrupted himself again. The other guys shifting their collective stare all back and forth between the two. Dude, Jesse parked next to his friend and nudged his arm. Chatter diminished amongst them all, leaving air filled with what seemed static electricity, and Brian and Troy having a death stare. Yo! A shout crashed into the tense group. Jerry, accompanied by Valerie, approached them all, almost tripping over one another. Jerry was skipping and was swinging a bright yellow plastic can, holding a dripping funnel in the other hand. Hey, Brian, I was just wondering, is there any reason the diesel for the track loader? Is that right? Yes, that's what it's called, said Brian, his sights not having left Troy yet. Yeah, is there any reason that should smell like cornbread? I was filling her up like you said, and me and Val just noticed it smelled kind of funny. You, you said cornbread? Brian's face collapsed, lifting his sunglasses as he turned to reply. Jerry shrugged, turning to Valerie. Yeah, we were joking because it smelled like Granny's oven up in that thing. Oh my God. Troy dug Troy dug his fingers into his eyelids after stomping out his cigarette into the gravel. What? Brian said. Troy turned to Jerry. When you guys went to fill up the tank, is there any chance the pump label said ethanol or E85 on it? Valerie widened her eyes. I swear it was the color of the pump handle green? Pressed Troy. Look, I told her to make sure it was diesel. Jerry flung the funnel in his hand such that a few droplets of liquid splat on Valerie's shoulder. Val let out a snort. You went to the pump yourself, my guy. She adjusted her specs. All right, let's get to it. Long day ahead, fellas. Brian closed his hands together. Troy dragged his crew, Trevin, Jesse, and Lint ahead. Beyond the ornate gateway, a long curve of what appeared to be freshly cured concrete made a generous swing, decorated by newly planted Spartan cypress trees. As the guys approached, the true scale of the building ahead revealed itself from underneath a host of spruce branches. This was Lee's Manor, as it was known to the churchgoers of the fellowship. Dark oak double doors with wrought iron decor was set inside a Tudor-style front arch. Several fancy windows, some of stained glass designs, and their respective flower boxes burst with all kinds of colorful annuals which uncovered the alpine elegance of the home. Aluminum scaffolding had been pitched up along a few dimensions of the building, with several workers scurrying back and forth, while some idly stood by watching the incoming guys below. The roof, in the rain troughs of the manor, shone against the noonday sun, with the rich copper glint of a newly minted penny. Just above the double doors, a sunset window soared to reveal a glittering crystal chandelier nestled in what must have been the greeting room inside. The soft cream textured walls of the house's exterior sat handsomely without blemish between beams of hardy oak wood, and the corners round about it were crusted with stone face and brick, artistically varied. At first glance, the manor must have carried at least 8 or 9 rooms inside, except that the closer one approached, the more clear it became that there was a great deal yet more to this humble mansion than met the eye. It sat snug upon the hill with a kind of hushed opulence. The property as a whole sat on top of a large slope, which led down to the shores of a private lake known as Gogwak. Nearly all their lives, the kids of Port Ridge had heard of Gogwak Lake, which fed the well-known river of the same name, and its tributaries shed across the county, notably through Luke's Preserve as well. The types of guys the likes of Jesse and Troy had only loosely associated with actually had access to the lake, far less anyone they'd known who lived on it. Gogwak was the place the rich kids growing up considered rich. As was an unmistakable signal of wealth in this area of Michigan, the affluent loved to build along the water, to the admiration, or maybe better put, silent envy, of the sportsmen of the area. Those privileged liked to hog all the waterways and woods as their own restricted property, and Gogwak was no exception. Evidently, the pious tabernacle had spared no expense either. While Lee's Manor wasn't the only residence technically on the lake, the church had generously donated the pastor and his family a big slice of the liquid pie for their disposal. A neighbor was nowhere in sight, and only a handful of little fishing shacks lined the immediate shores, stricken down by the impositions of Lee's extravagant fortress. Troy, as crew lead, was given a packet by Dan himself, displaying a blueprint for the project they were to begin working on. It was an unusual task per what seemed routine, in that Dan had specifically mentioned that Brian needn't any immediate access to Troy's plan, but that Dan himself should be the guy he should refer to if any questions came up. Brian's habit of wanting dominion over operations appeared frustrated for a time, much to Troy's delight, who'd gleefully accepted the assignment when approached earlier on.